This is A Course in Miracles, Chapter 1, Section 5, Wholeness and Spirit. The miracle is much like the body, in that both are learning aids for facilitating a state in which they become unnecessary. When spirit's original state of direct communication is reached, neither the body nor the miracle serves any purpose. While you believe you are in a body, however, you can choose between loveless and miraculous channels of expression. You can make an empty shell, but you cannot express nothing at all. You can wait, delay, paralyze yourself, or reduce your creativity almost to nothing, but you cannot abolish it. You can destroy your medium of communication, but not your potential. You did not create yourself. The basic decision of the miracle-minded is not to wait on time any longer than is necessary. Time can waste as well as be wasted. The miracle worker, therefore, accepts the time control factor gladly. He recognizes that every collapse of time brings everyone closer to the ultimate release from time, in which the Son and the Father are one. Equality does not imply equality now. When everyone recognizes that he has everything, individual contributions to the sonship will no longer be necessary. When the atonement has been completed, all talents will be shared by all the sons of God. God is not partial. All his children have his total love, and all his gifts are freely given to everyone alike. Except ye become as little children, means that unless you fully recognize your complete dependence on God, you cannot know the real power of the Son in his true relationship with the Father. The specialness of God's sons does not stem from exclusion, but from inclusion. All my brothers are special. If they believe they are deprived of anything, All my brothers are special. If they believe they are deprived of anything, their perception becomes distorted. When this occurs, the whole family of God or the sonship is impaired in its relationships. Ultimately, every member of the family of God must return. The miracle calls him to return because it blesses and honors him, even though he may be absent in spirit. God is not mocked, is not a warning, but a reassurance. God would be mocked if any of his creations lacked holiness. The creation is whole, and the mark of wholeness is holiness. Miracles are affirmations of sonship, which is a state of completion and abundance. Whatever is true is eternal and cannot change or be changed. Spirit is therefore unalterable because it is already perfect, but the mind can elect what it chooses to serve. The only limit put on its choice is that it cannot serve two masters. If it elects to do so, the mind can become the medium by which spirit creates along the line of its own creation. If it does not freely elect to do so, it retains its creative potential, but places itself under tyrannous rather than authoritative control. As a result, it imprisons, because such are the dictates of tyrants. To change your mind means to place it at the disposal of true authority. The miracle is a sign that the mind has chosen to be led by me in Christ's service. The abundance of Christ is a natural result of choosing to follow him. All shallow roots must be uprooted because they are not deep enough to sustain you. The illusion that shallow roots can be deepened and thus made to hold is one of the distortions on which the reverse of the golden rule rests. As these false underpinnings are given up, the equilibrium is temporarily experienced as unstable. However, nothing is less stable than an upside-down orientation, nor can anything that holds it upside down be conducive to increased stability. Okay, so it says here that the miracle, actually first I want to acknowledge the previous episode, or the previous section, which was the escape from darkness. If you saw the video, it was a really interesting experience just because I had so much resistance to record that. And it took me weeks longer than I had initially planned on doing it. And the time that I was recording it was around 4 a.m, to give you an idea of how long I was delaying actually just facing the information that was coming through the page there. So if you saw that and maybe I looked a little disheveled or something like that, it's because it was 4 a.m. and it was actually a perfect example of when the ego mind has resistance, when we don't want to let go of what we've thought has been true. And that every single time that we allow ourselves to open up to these teachings or whatever form of teaching resonates with you, to open up your heart, it is beneficial. And it's basically time, as it says at the beginning of the course. It is that the course is mandatory. Like, it's inevitable that we're all going to go on this course, but the amount of time that we take is what's optional. So we can delay as long as we want, days, weeks, months, years, lifetimes. But to acknowledge that every time that we choose to perceive differently, choose a miracle, choose to open up to seeing something differently, that is collapsing time for you and for the whole universe, because we're part of the whole. It says that the miracle is much like the body in that both are learning aids for facilitating a state in which they become unnecessary. So a miracle isn't needed when all is forgiven. When we are perceiving correctly all the time, there's no need for miracles. Miracles are just taking us from the old thought system to the forgiven thought system. And same thing with the body. The body is something temporary. It's not, we don't hold on to this after we die. It's here for us, for our process of learning in this experience, and that's it. And then it says, while you believe you are in a body, however, you can choose between loveless and miraculous channels of expression. What this is saying is that while you believe you are in a body, you can choose between loveless and miraculous channels of expression. So you can choose, while you're here in this experience of being in a body, for the experience to be fully empty, fully void of love, fully just going through the motions, and identifying with that state of the body of being loveless, or miraculous channels of expression. So we can allow ourselves to use these vessels, use these bodies, use these experiences that we're having to channel miracles. And so, yeah, when I got more into the text and wasn't confused that, okay, like, it's not just about dissociating and detaching from the body and that's it. It's so much deeper than that. It's actually realizing that we don't need to detach from anything, but rather kind of yoke ourselves to what is really true, to the aspect of ourselves which is really true, which is not the body. This is not what our real identity is. It's just the temporary vessel in which we can use for a purpose. Equality does not imply equality now. When everyone recognizes that he has everything, individual contributions to the sonship will no longer be necessary. And when the atonement has been completed, all talents will be shared by all the sons of God. And yes, I remember a couple of experiences. One was I was in a Theta Healing advanced instructor seminar, like one of the more advanced ones. And it was one of the first times that this particular class had been released in the world. So I felt really like special. Oh, I'm getting some of the like cutting edge information in terms of healing and consciousness. And part of that came, that's, you can call it spiritual ego, you can call it spiritual materialism, whatever you want to call it. But I definitely had a fear that my talents, my abilities to with all my psychic abilities and whatnot were going to be sort of diluted when other people were also going to learn these things. And there was definitely a fear about that. And actually that fear, as I looked into it, was just rooted in ego, in being attached to wanting to hold on to, these are my talents, I'm special, I'm different, I'm better than, in some way. But realizing that it might seem like that, we might seem to be at different levels, more or less advanced in our progression of consciousness or our talents or whatever. And that's when it says equality doesn't imply equality now. So now we might perceive that things are not equal, that some people have more, some people have less, some people have more talents, some people have fewer talents. But this talks about at the point where everyone recognizes that he has everything, individual contributions won't be necessary. So basically, when everyone wakes up, when everyone realizes that we are everything, that we are whole, that we have all the talents and it's not limited to my talents and your talents, that it's all part of the same, then there's no need for individual contributions. And that shift was one that I think maybe people who are on a spiritual path sometimes encounter, where sometimes we think, oh, I have these special abilities and that makes me different, unique, special, better than, maybe that makes you feel good on some level for a period of time. But the sort of next step of that evolution is actually seeing the wholeness and seeing your talent as not separate as somebody else's talent. Whatever is true is eternal and cannot change or be changed. Spirit is therefore unalterable because it is already perfect, but the mind can elect what it chooses to serve. The only limit put on its choice is that it cannot serve two masters. We can't serve two masters, one master being spirit and the other master being ego. And it just always comes down to that simple choice. What do you want to choose? Do you want to choose from the ego or do you want to choose from the spirit? Remembering that when we choose from the spirit, we don't lose anything. And that is the thing that the ego is usually most afraid of is, if I have to let go of this, then I won't exist anymore. But of course, that's the ego's self-talk as a form of self-preservation. But yeah, just to remember that when we fully choose spirit, we actually feel more whole. It's a nice reminder. And then it says, if it elects to do so, that is, if it elects to serve the spirit, the mind can become the medium by which spirit creates along the line of its own creation. So what that says to me is that when we choose with the spirit, then we allow ourselves to co-create. We allow ourselves to surrender in that creation. And that's much more powerful than us trying to control the creation from the ego perspective. And it talks in the next paragraph about this. All shallow roots must be uprooted because they are not deep enough to sustain you. So that means that the shallow roots are basically the thoughts and perceptions that are rooted in ego, which are shallow. Like on a level, okay, they might give you some sense of grounding, but they're not deeply rooted. And so it will not sustain you. That over time, the thought system, the perceptions that you have are not going to sustain over time. And it says, the illusion that shallow roots can be deepened and thus made to hold is one of the distortions on which the reverse of the golden rule rests. So basically that illusion that we are separate, that we can do this ourselves. I got this. Like, I got it taken care of. I'm in control. I don't need the spirit. I know the spirit's telling me to do this, but let me do it this way because this is right. This is going to help me, and I know what's better. This is more logical. This makes more sense. This is more rational. Whatever thoughts that the ego are used to convince you to take root in those shallow roots is one of the distortions. So if we recall the golden rule, it's do unto others, but it's actually realizing that others are you and you are others, the connection, the wholeness, versus the shallow roots concept, which is just you, which is the ego separate from the rest. And it says that as these false underpinnings are given up, the equilibrium is temporarily experienced as unstable. However, nothing is less stable than an upside-down orientation, nor can anything that holds it upside down be conducive to increased stability. It's talking about the process of letting go of these illusions of being rooted in like knowing something and experiencing something and thinking that it's true from the ego perspective. That as we start to uproot, as we lose these shallow roots, the equilibrium, it might seem very unstable. So what that means is if you basically start to integrate some of the teachings of the Course, it's like each little nugget of wisdom is like pulling up a root from this tree and saying like, this one is not going to hold. This one's not going to hold either. All the illusions that we've thought were very true about the world and ourselves and life, as each one gets uprooted, it might seem very unstable, but this is just part of the process. And it's actually only from the ego perspective that it seems very unstable. And I think a lot of people that go through this text and really apply it have some sort of experience like this, where it feels very ungrounded, or you get feedback where people are like, oh my gosh, you're crazy. And I've witnessed that with others and also with myself. And, I think that's part of the process is realizing that, it's going to be unstable unless you just are immediately tuned into the deep wisdom of these non-dual teachings. Then maybe it's not unstable. And if you always live from that place, then maybe it's not. But for most people who have been rooted in the system of the world that we've been taught, it is a very destabilizing and can be a scary thing. And the thing is that, like compared to, say, a lot of what modern psychology says, like that could be a psychotic break. That could be a dissociative fugue, or whatever terms exist to try to scare people from having these experiences. And I'm not saying that anytime someone dissociates or every time that someone has a psychotic break that they're awakening. I don't know. But that it from the outside, from this world that most of us are embedded in, it might seem very destabilizing. In my experience, that's temporary. And then what you root yourself in becomes something very stable, which is God, which never goes away. And one more thing to share about this is, after ayahuasca retreats that I would facilitate, a lot of people had the experience of feeling really ungrounded and not sure how to kind of ground back, because they're very much like up here in these ceremonies. And what I would tell people is that sometimes, like when you get the rug pulled under you, the ground that you thought was stable isn't anymore. And so it doesn't make sense to root yourself back into the same place. but rather find where you want to put your real rootings. And the way I would explain it to people is that I learned how to put my root in God. And it's almost as if it's like not grounded in the same way, like it's ever changing, it's adaptable, but at least the feeling of wholeness, of connection, of peace, that is what keeps me grounded. So I hope that this is helpful. Thank you so much. Bye for now.